Good day, everyone. My name is Laila Itahan, and now we will be talking about managing speech anxiety and modes of delivery. But before that, let us first define what is public speaking. Now, when I say public speaking, it is the act of sharing information in front of a group to inform, influence, or even entertain. Now, when I say public speaking, from its word public and speaking, wherein you a speaker that is speaking in front of a small group or a group or even a larger group, whether to inform, influence, or even entertain. Now, let us say na I am inside a classroom and I am speaking in front of the students or even teachers, wherein I am somehow informing regarding our topic, our discussions, or our lesson, and I'm also influencing the audience or the students to listen carefully about our discussion, and I am somehow entertaining, depende sa speaker, pwede siya magbigay ng activities or pa-games sa students. And sometimes there are also reasons that might interfere sa speaker na hindi siya maging effective communication or effective public speaker due to the speech anxiety wherein tinatawag siya communication apprehension. And in communication apprehension, there are two types of CA wherein the first one is trait apprehension. When we say trait apprehension, it is a person's natural tendency to feel anxious when speaking. It is a person's natural trait. Now, di ba, sometimes there are some person who would say na mahiyain kasi ako or shy type kasi ako, and the tendency of that is they felt anxious when speaking. And the next step is state apprehension, wherein a fear caused by a specific situation. For instance, there's this a person na ready na siya or they don't feel scared usually, hindi sila matatakotin, hindi sila kinakabahan usually, but because of a specific situation, pag sila na yung magsasalita, for instance, pag ako na yung next na magsasalita, or ako na yung next na speaker, is biglang magme-mental block ako, bigla akong kakabahan because of a specific situation. That is what we call a state apprehension. There are also another type of CA or communication apprehension, which is the public speaking anxiety. It is a type of CA focused on presentation or speech. It affects people in three ways. The first one is physiological. When we say physiological, for instance, the fast heartbeat, pag ang isang tao is usually nagkakaroon ng speech anxiety is kinakabahan siya to the point na sobrang bilis ng heartbeat or nagpa-palpitate siya. Next one is the cognitive. Pag sinabi natin cognitive, it is more focused on the mind or mga negative thinking ng isang tao. What if magkamali ako or ginajudge nila ako? That is the tendency of the cognitive. And the last one is the behavioral, wherein it is a nervous habits like stammering or avoiding eye contact. Now, when we say behavioral, it is the usually na na-observe natin sa isang tao or mga mannerism na nagagawa or na-observe natin pag ang isang tao is kinakabahan or may public speaking anxiety.
Good day everyone, I'm Laini Itaha and my presentation is going to be all about on how to manage speech anxiety. So first we have to understand that public speaking makes a lot of people nervous, which results to them having speech anxiety or the fear of communicating in front of many people. Therefore, we have listed here 5 effective ways on eliminating speech anxiety. So the first one is the systematic desensitization. The term desensitization refers to the process of gradually getting used to something that you we're uncomfortable of. Therefore, the systematic desensitization is defined as the process of getting used to public speaking through repeated exposure, which helps reduce anxiety. So, the first way of managing speech anxiety is all about having more exposure and having more experience. The more that we expose ourselves to different public speaking activities, is the more that we gain experience, and the more that we gain experience is also the more that we feel more comfortable in delivering a speech in front of many people, which means we can eliminate our fear of public speaking or our speech anxiety. So the second way of managing speech anxiety is cognitive restructuring, and it's defined as the process of changing how you think about public speaking and to recognize that many fears are irrational and replace negative thoughts with positive ones. So cognitive restructuring is all about our mindset. When it comes to public speaking, we first have to restructure our minds to focus more on the positive thoughts or the positive possible outcomes rather than the negative ones. Because the more that we burden ourselves with negative thoughts, it could really have a huge impact on our speech delivery, which will eventually result in more speech anxiety. Therefore, we have to fuel our mind with positive thoughts rather than the negative ones. So under the cognitive restructuring are the two techniques. So the first one is the COM therapy. COM stands for communication, orientation, and motivation. Communication means we have to focus our thoughts and expressing ideas during the speech. Orientation, we have to think of our speech or public speaking as a conversation, not a performance. And motivation, we have to be confident with ourselves, and that could be achieved by having positive thoughts. So COM therapy is defined as the process of thinking of your speech as a conversation, not a performance, which means we could think of our speech as like a casual conversation instead of like thinking of it as a performance, because the more that we think of it as like a performance, the more that we pressure ourselves into not making any mistakes, which will eventually result to more anxiety during the speech. Therefore, if we think of it as a just mere or casual conversation with a lot of people, the more that we feel comfortable in delivering our speech, we feel more relaxed, and we could deliver our speech more effectively. The second one is the positive visualization. It is defined as the process of picturing yourself succeeding, not failing. So, of course, when it comes to public speaking, we have to really focus our mind on thinking on the good outcomes instead of thinking about the irrational thoughts like, what if I embarrass myself? What if I make a mistake? We should focus ourselves, or we should rather imagine ourselves in successfully delivering our speech rather than pressuring ourselves by having irrational or negative thoughts. So those are the two techniques, the COM therapy and the positive visualization. So the third one is the skills training. Learn and practice specific speech skills. So of course, as individuals, we all have our own skills within ourselves. So we just have to discover them. So some of these skills are, the first one is the topic selection. Of course, when it comes to public speaking or making speeches, we have to select topics carefully because we cannot deliver a speech effectively if we are not familiar with the topic that we are trying to convey to the audience. Second one is the organizing content. So of course, in speeches, we have to organize our thoughts. We have to make sure that everything is cohesive and interrelated with each other so that we don't cause any misunderstandings with the audience and when it comes to our speech delivery. So the third one is the voice control. Of course, when it comes to delivering speeches, we have to make sure that our intonation, the pitch of our voice, is really suited to the speech that we are trying to convey. Like for example, right now I am discussing in front of you guys, therefore I have to make my voice sound very professional. So the last but not the least example of skill is the audience engagement. Of course, when it comes to speech delivery, public speaking, we are communicating with a lot of people. And in order for us to deliver a speech very effectively, we have to engage with the audience. We have to have a connection with them. We have to build rapport with them in order for us to have a successful and effective delivery. So the fourth one is the physical relaxation techniques. It is to manage physical symptoms caused by stress hormones. So some stress hormones are adrenaline and cortisol. So when it comes to speech anxiety, it not only affects our mind or brain, but it also affects our physical body. And therefore, we also have to take care and maintain our physiological aspect. And we could do that by through stretching, walking, or light exercises, and deep breathing also reduces tension and clears the mind. So those are just very simple examples of physical relaxation techniques, but they can really have a huge impact in eliminating speech anxiety, because again, speech anxiety not only affects the mind, but it also affects the body, and therefore we also have to take care of our physiological aspect. So for the last but not least, the vocal warm-ups. So it is to help your face and mouth muscles prepare, improve clarity and fluency. So in vocal warm-ups, it is the thing that we do in order to prepare for a speech. So vocal warm-ups are like tongue twisters, throat exercises, or mouth exercises. There's a lot of examples of it, but they have a very huge impact in eliminating speech anxiety, because one thing that we want to avoid when it comes to delivering a speech is to mispronounce a word, which may really cause a huge misunderstanding towards the speaker and the audience. Therefore, vocal warm-ups are very necessary in order to ensure a clear delivery, pronunciation, enunciation of words, and to really sound very fluent in the language of the speech that you are delivering in. So those are the very effective ways on how to manage speech anxiety. So the first one is the systematic desensitization, the cognitive restructuring, the skills training, the physical relaxation techniques, and the vocal warm-ups. So I hope you guys have learned something. Thank you.
So, a pleasant day to everyone, especially to our respective instructor, Man Zakaria. So, before I begin my presentation today, please allow me to introduce myself. So, I am Mr. Abel Kersnel, and today, we are diving into 4 methods of speech delivery, just as the impromptu speech, manuscript speech, memorized, and the extemporaneous use. And I also believe that understanding this method is crucial for effective communications in any setting, from a casual conversations to a formal presentation. So now, let's start with the impromptu speech. So, when I talk about the impromptu speech, it is speaking without prior notice or preparation. So basically, it is done on the spot because you have to respond immediately to the questions precisely. This speech is actually used for the informal conversation and can happen in any setting, just as in school, networking events, works, and any other informal occasion. It is also known as the speaking of the cat without any preparation. So we have the 3 examples here. So first is the self-introduction. Now, think of this time you unexpectedly need to introduce yourself at school, especially in the first day of class, wherein the teacher asks you to introduce yourself at the classroom so that your teachers and your classmates will get to know about yourself, including your name, age, address, and so on and so forth. Secondly is the answering the questions in class. Absolutely, as a student, we can deny the fact that we unexpectedly ask questions in class, especially in oral recitation, because when the teachers calls your name and asks you questions about your certain topic, you have to respond and answer the given questions or else remain standing. Lastly is the personal experience speech. So that is the example of the impromptu speech. So we have the advantage and disadvantage. So in advantage, the impromptu speech might be natural, spontaneous, and responsive conversations because the impromptu speech should be authentic and it's also good for the informal. So basically, you don't have to use formal language or to be formality. While it fosters spontaneity and naturalness, it can also lead to disorganized thoughts and lacks of preparations, which affect your clarity. So we have the best technique for effective impromptu speech. First is to think briefly before you speak, keep your message concise and pause to collect your thoughts, and most importantly, avoid saying you are unprepared. It's better to simply begin and focus on your main points. So that is the impromptu speech. So now, let's move to the manuscript speech. So when I talk about the manuscript speech, it is a method of delivering a speech where the speaker reads the speech word for word from a prepared script. So it is not only about reading aloud, it is a carefully crafted performance where the written text is paramount. Now, the reason why the script is provided because the manuscript requires the precision and the accuracy. Because in certain contexts, the precise wording is crucial, just as the legal proceeding, scientific presentations, or the official announcement often requires the specific language to avoid misinterpretation. In addition to that, manuscript also ensures that the message is conveyed without any deviations from the intended meaning. So the manuscript speech also used in TV, radio broadcast, business meeting, formal events, or the MC. So we have also the advantage and the disadvantage. So the advantage is the no memory strain, accuracy, and the ability to carefully written and edited your video right away. However, relying on reading script can also make your delivery sounds robotic and may limit eye contact and connections with your audience. So that is the manuscript speech. So now, let's move to the memorized speech. So when I talk about the memorized speech, it also involves delivering speech entirely from memory without using notes or the manuscript. So basically, it requires a lot of preparations and time to memorize your speech, unlike the impromptu that there is no allocated time for you to practice. In addition to that, memorizing a speech effectively requires a strategic approach that goes beyond simply rereading the text repeatedly. So, memorized speech can also use in theater or performance, a competition, ceremony, orations, and the declamation, because all of these examples also requires a lot of time to memorize the whole speech. And now, you might be thinking, why bother memorizing when I can just use notes or the manuscript? And that's a valid question. But memory speaking offers unique advantage. First is the good eye contact and movement. Secondly, no reliance on notes, frees your hands and body. So consider the audience connections. Without notes or the script, you have the freedom to make eye contact with your audience. These direct engagements creates a more personal and impactful experience for your listener. Secondly, is the body language. When you are not holding a script, your body language becomes more natural and expressive. You can move freely, use gesture, and adjust your posture to emphasize your points. This enhances both the clarity and the memorability of your message, and it can also enhance our confidence. So next is we must acknowledge the disadvantage of the memory speaking. First is it can be sounds flat if not delivered with emotions and vocal. Because if without vocal or emotions, it can lead to stiff, and unnatural delivery. Therefore, it's not suitable for every situations. Next is the if you forget your lines, it's hard to recover. So the major drawback is the potentials of forgetting your lines, leading to awkward pauses and disrupting the flow of the speech. So that is the disadvantage and advantage of the memorized speaking. And last but not the least is the extemporaneous speech. So what is extemporaneous speech? It is a style of speech delivery that combines through preparations with a conversational and adaptable approach. So basically, it is not considered as the impromptu speech, nor it is reading directly from a script, because when you talk about the extemporaneous speech, it also involves delivering a well-rehearsed speech using a brief notes or the outline as a guide. So I believe that will be all, and I have already stated the four methods of speech delivery. So I hope you understand. Bye bye.